Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back. This is going to be my second episode, or rather the third episode, on sex, marriage, and all things related. Now, please subscribe, like, and share. I may have a slight lisp or speech defect at the moment because I'm undergoing some dental thing, and it has altered my speech slightly. So it sounds kind of weird even to me. But as long as you can understand what I'm saying, I think it's all good. And so let's continue. So imagine that you eat steak every day. Now, obviously, in the beginning, when you start out eating steak, it's delicious, it's lovely, it's nutritious, and it's enjoyable. But after you eat steak for 1 week, you still deeply appreciate it. But when it comes to 1 month, you start looking to spice up the steak a bit with something extra, Maybe you want to take a break from steak and switch to something else. Maybe you want to try some fish out. Maybe you want to try some vegetable dishes out. Maybe you want to just, experience variety. And then later, when you go back to the steak, you find that it really is something you missed and really is as enjoyable as it was to begin with. And this is exactly how things happen with many people in their sexual lives as committed partners. Because initially, you may enjoy the novelty of the person. You may enjoy the phase of discovery, but eventually that novelty wears off. Eventually you feel like you have traversed the entirety of that person, of your significant other, your wife or your husband, and it becomes normal, if not even mundane. And this is the thing that we all want to avoid, especially considering that you will be confined to that one man, hopefully for the rest of your life, and or that one or two or three or four women for the rest of your life. Now, 4 women, being confined even to 4 women, as in the polygyny, is not actually a lot, okay? It's not actually the extent of the variety that men crave. Even men who do have 4 wives may desire even more than that. For example, by way of variety, even the 4 wives becomes pretty normal, for him. And so everyone has the challenge of trying to find the joy and satisfaction and contentment within the sexual experience of their spouses, whether man or woman, whether in polygyny or monogamy. And that can be achieved with some forethought, some strategy, and some commitment to fulfilling your sexual relationships in a long-term and meaningful way, strategically, that is. The big difference is, of course, when you go to the steakhouse, back to the steakhouse, the novelty of that steakhouse and the novelty of that steak is going to, of course, enthuse you to come back again, right? I mean, it's a delicious steak. It's a wonderful experience. You'll come back again. But afterwards, you will seek variety, both man and woman. And so, how do we prevent either spouse, male or female, from seeking that variety? Well, you become the variety in and of yourself. You become the variety. And how do you do that? Well, you need to retain the mystery in the sexual experience of the other. So I will start with the man first. Okay, the man. How do you retain the mystery in the sexual experience for your wife or wives? First of all, you do this by not approaching sex in the same way all the time. So, for example, you don't say, "Hey, do you want to have sex?" Okay, that's the kill switch. Okay, because you open up the door to her saying no. And when she says no to sex, this leads to a downward spiral, because she gets a kick out of saying no, because it puts her in a position of power and authority. She can leverage sex now as a weapon, okay? Because you have made it an open-ended question. You said, "Hey, do you want to have sex?" So never say that, okay? Married men, never ask your wife permission. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't obtain permission from her when you have sex with her, of course, because you can't have sex with anyone against their will, even your wife. But you don't have to ask. You don't ask. It should never come across as though you're asking, and it should never come across as though you're begging. Okay, because you're putting her in a position where she can use your sexual drive as leverage to get things right with you that you would otherwise not agree to. And then you fall into this negative loop of being rewarded with sex, whereas sex is your right, it's not a reward. So you don't do that, okay? Never ask permission. If you want to have sex with your wife, seduce her. Don't ask for permission. Okay. The other thing is, don't always approach sex in the same way. It doesn't have to be at night. It doesn't have to be in the bed. It doesn't have to be on the weekend. Don't make sex a routine. Don't have a routine around sex. Okay? Make it spontaneous. Okay? Go with how you feel. So if your wife is cooking, for example, in the kitchen, and she's looking very sexy in the kitchen, bare feet, in her mini skirt, cooking for you, and that turns you on, then approach her. I mean, have sex with her in the kitchen even. I mean, okay, people will feel like, okay, no, that's disgusting because it's a kitchen. Well, you can always clean up, right? But be spontaneous, okay? If you come home and you see your wife and you want her there and then, I mean, obviously presuming if you don't yet have kids, then have her there and then wherever it is in your house, right? If you have kids, drag her off to your bedroom or throw her over your shoulder, or be spontaneous, be unpredictable, be adventurous, and this is how you're going to keep her enthusiastic about what you do, because women like mystery and women like adventure. And if you're going to be boring, you are going to dry her up, basically. It's going to become a chore. You're going to end up with a wife who's just going to roll over onto her back and just, have you do the deed because it's her religious obligation or something like that. You don't want obligation, okay? You don't want that. It's not. It's also going to make you eventually not really want to sleep with your wife, because it's not at all satisfying in the long run to sleep with a woman who sleeps with you out of obligation and not out of desire. So you want to encourage that desire to continue. Okay. The other thing is that what really helps with your sex life with your wife is desirability overall by other women. Believe it or not. I mean, it sounds outrageous. Women will say to you, no, absolutely not. But when you are a man that is in demand and or desirable by other women, this turns your wife on. This will turn your wife on. So how is that achievable? That is achievable if you, as a man, you look after yourself, you are healthy, you're physically strong and fit, and you are always in the best shape of your life, or not, if not the best shape, close to the best shape. Okay, like I obviously am 90% of the time in the best shape of my life, but of course you cannot sustain that permanently. Okay, I'm going to be 42 in a month, and obviously I can't be at peak performance all the time. Okay, we have jobs and many things we are doing, but you have to maintain a baseline as a man, okay? So that when you are amongst other men, you on average are seen as being on the upper layer, on the upper level of men, or as men go. For example, if I am walking around in the supermarket or in the store, or on the street or in the bank or wherever I am, I should be on average within the top level of physicality in any given setting. Of course, I'm not going to be that if I go to a professional boxing gym where all these people are professional fighters. I'm not going to be that in that setting, okay? I'm not going to be that in the professional bodybuilding gym where these guys are competing on stage, right? And you don't have to be that in those settings. That's not where your wife is going to be hanging out anyway. But you need to be that in the average setting where you and your wife will find yourselves together. So, for example, if you're walking around in the shopping mall with your wife and women are constantly checking you out, okay? And women check out men all the time. It doesn't matter which culture you are in, okay? Even Muslim cultures, right? Then it's just going to be more subtle, obviously, in the Muslim culture, but it happens. But you may not notice it, but your wife will, okay? So this is going to validate her position for her, because women find validation through other women, okay? So she's going to feel flattered. She's going to feel irritated, a little bit annoyed, but she's also on the other side of things going to feel flattered that she's with a man who would otherwise be well sought after by other women. So this causes validation, and the pheromones that these other women are sort of, putting out there, because now, it sparks their interest. They're attracted to you, right? So that female energy that's coming in from all these other women, they're going to impact her. So 9 out of 10 times when you come home from having been out, and this is what she's been observing all day, she's going to immediately want to sleep with you when you get home. That's just how it is, okay? It's going to be like that because she wants to almost place her stamp on you again. She wants to remind herself and you, right, about how nice her cake tastes, right? How much she wants to remind herself that you really like her cake, most of all, and she wants to remind you how nice her cake tastes, basically, because lest you stray from her, given all your optionality, okay? And that's optionality is part of the sexual equation, okay? Nobody wants a man that nobody wants, basically. Even your wife, okay? If you are the type of man, you are married, and now you let yourself go and you become very fat and you're lazy and you just want to watch movies and you don't want to, you take yourself out of the game, in other words, right? When you walk around, there isn't a woman that's going to look at you a second time. Your wife senses your low value based on the estimation of other women. Women are collectivist creatures, okay? Women go where women go, in other words. And nobody wants a man that nobody wants. So you need to remember these things, okay? Say it with me. Nobody wants a man that nobody wants. Now this is true even when you are married, okay? But when you're the type of man that everybody wants, even though you are married, yes, this on the one hand pushes your wife out of shape a little bit. She feels uncomfortable by it on the one hand, but on the other hand, it does turn her on and it does keep the bed warm, right? It keeps the sex interesting because it creates that tension, okay? Sex requires tension, okay? There must be for a woman, some feeling is better than no feeling, okay? And even if the emotion is negative, emotion is what women live for. So emotion is better than no emotion. That's why toxic women will create chaos in your life, because they thrive off the emotionality, the emotions around it, even though it's negative emotions, because that turns them on. So the problem with boredom, with being too routine, being too predictable, is that it takes that element away, right? So this is what you can do from the perspective of the man. We are 18 minutes into the video, okay? I'm going to try to I will introduce what women can do, and then in the next video I will continue with that, okay? So and obviously I can expand on what there's lots of other things men can do, but we will expand on that at a later stage, because I want to get to the woman. I want my videos to be watched equally by men and women. Again, please like, subscribe, and share. Okay, if you don't know who I am the polygamist, Coach the Brains, and I know what I'm talking about, obviously. So, from the woman's perspective, what can you do? Okay, how do you keep your husband interested and engaged in this competitive world where he is constantly being sought after by other women, and also women are trying to seduce him endlessly, especially if you have a good-looking, well-established man. Okay, so this is you are in competition. The first thing that you need to acknowledge is that you are in competition. A lot of women get married, they think, okay, I've locked the man down and that's that, job done. The job is never done. Okay, as a woman, you are in competition with all other women constantly. Period. You need to know that you are in competition. If he leaves his home in the morning and you are sleeping, and then he comes home in the afternoon and you're walking around in your pajamas, and you have not done anything to look after yourself and your beauty and your appearance, there are women out there, his secretary at work, the tea girl, the receptionist, so many women who have taken basically an hour in the morning to make themselves as attractive as they can before they leave the house. Okay? And those are the women that are talking to your husband all day. Okay? So you have Sarah at work with her mini skirt and her high heels and her makeup and her perfume and her cleavage and she's flirting with your husband all day because she has access to him all day, 8-9 hours a day at work, right? And then you don't bother even to get up in the morning to see him off, and you don't bother to seduce him when he comes in by the door. But there are 3, 4, 5, 6 women trying to seduce him all day. Okay? How's that gonna work? I mean, just think about it. Okay? Then you want him to be sexually loyal to you just out of sheer commitment to the fact that maybe you have kids together and or this is the household that he's coming to. Trust me, I'm a man. Okay? I know what I'm talking about. He's going to fuck one of those other women at work. If that's your attitude. Is it right? No, it's not right. I'm being pragmatic and I'm just being frank. I'm not here to tell you that the things I'm describing is not because I condone it. It's just because it happens in life. I coach lots of men. I talk to men who cheat on their wives all the time. Men know these things are about each other. Their wives will never know. Okay? But the men in the office and the men overseas and the places they travel to, etc., they know. Okay? But if you ask these same men, right, would they ever leave their wives? They'll say no. If you ask them, do they love their wives? They'll say yes. Okay? They just don't want to fuck them. They've lost sexual interest in the wife. They will sleep with the wife because men often have big appetites. So he will on occasion sleep with the wife because she's available for that and she lives in his house. But really that's all it is. It's not because she massively strikes his fancy and is massively desirable. And that part she can fix. That's on her, okay? His fidelity is something that he needs to take care of. Of course, he should not be fucking the woman at work. But she can help him with that. She can help make sure that doesn't happen as best she can from her side. Obviously, we're also relying on the fact that men should have morals, right? And not stray from their marriages regardless. But we also need to be pragmatic and practical and realistic. And so what do you do, ladies? Okay, first of all, in order to remain sexually attractive to a man, you cannot dominate him. Okay, do not be domineering. Do not dictate to your husband that he needs to do what you want or else, because that is the kill switch for a man. Just like we spoke about the kill switch for a woman, when a man begs his wife for sex, that's a kill switch. When he asks her permission, that's a kill switch. For the man, being domineering and dominant and expecting him to do just what you want or else, right? If he complies, you are setting yourself up for failure in your sexual life. Because you might think that you want to be dominant, and you might think that you want him to comply with your whims, and you may like the fact that you have the carrot and the whip going, right? But if he complies with you when you try to be domineering, you will instantly lose your attraction to your husband. You will no longer see him as a viable sex partner. Now there's biological reasons, there's evolutionary reasons for that, there's psychological reasons for that, but we will not get into that now. We're just talking about sex, plain and simple. Okay? So don't be domineering. Don't try to dominate your man. Don't expect your man to comply with you. Don't place yourself in a position where that is the requirement, because that will kill it for you. This is detrimental to you. Okay? In the next episode, I will continue with what women can do to keep their husbands interested. And again, don't forget to like, subscribe, share. Let this video go viral on X. Let it go viral on YouTube. Let it go viral on Rumble and wherever else you find it, so that we can get the message out. Thank you.